So if you're like me, the only way that you debug your code is by just putting console.log hello everywhere or console.log in a variable because you're lazy. But actually, there are a lot better ways of doing console stuff. For example, if you console.log the console itself, you can see that if you expand this, there are tons of different functions. And in this video, we're going to go over all of them. So a place that you can use console.assert is if you expect something to happen, and if it doesn't happen, it will print a warning. So for example, the first parameter takes in a boolean, and the second parameter is a message or a string. So if the boolean is false, it will print out the second one. So if you want to console.log a message, for example, you can assert that type of message equals string. So it will only work if the message is actually a string. So if you change this to a number, on the here it will say assertion failed, this is not a string. And if you change this to I don't know, true, same thing. You have to make it a string, right? Or you can maybe do something else, like I don't know, message. It has to be hello, or it doesn't work. So now, right, not equals. Okay, yep, this is not a string. We can change it to this is not hello, for example. And now if you change it to anything other than hello, it doesn't work. Okay, the next one are a group of two console functions. So the first thing is console.count. So as you expect, it just counts 1, and if you copy and paste this a bunch of times, I don't know, it says console.count 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then there's another thing called count reset, and what that does is basically it resets the count. So now if you do more counts, it will say console, it just goes back to 1. Alright, and you can see that it says default. What does that mean? It means that you can count actually a bunch of other stuff. So you can have one with the name hello. So we say hello 1 here instead of default 1. So you can have two separate counters, and after the count reset, hello continues going because the count reset only resets the default one. If you want to reset the counter hello, you also have to pass in the string hello here. So now if you start counting, hello also resets like that. So pretty simple, and also I would find it pretty useful in many situations. So I would guess that sometimes you might just use a counter to use a variable, but yeah, this is much. Okay, the next one is console.debug, and after doing some research, it appears that console.debug is exactly the same as console.log. So if we say console.log debug, it gives you that, and console.log. If you compare both of them, the only difference I can see is that there's this blue tag here. So that's the only difference as far as I can see, and in some browsers like Internet Explorer is exactly the same. Okay, so now I have an object called person with a bunch of stuff, and there's a favorites thing, and favorites is actually another object with food, color, and place. So if we console.log this variable person, it will format it like this. But if you use console.dir person, it will actually format it in a nice looking way with all of these drop down menus and yeah, everything. So that's basically it. Console.dir is pretty cool, and you can see that from before, when we said console.log console, it does that. But if you do console.dir console, it will actually make it in a way that looks pretty good. Another thing you can use this for is that if you console.log, I don't know, document body, it console.logs formatted in HTML. But if you want to see all the attributes and the functions and whatever, you can do console.dir document.body, and this actually gives you all the possible attributes, the on click, the on mouse down, and whatever the child knows, and yeah. So this is pretty useful when you're looking at HTML, for example, and a bunch of other things. Okay, now let's look at console.dirxml. So if you do this, you can notice that both of them actually print the same thing now for the person object. But if the object can be formatted as XML, or HTML. So like for example, console.dirxml document.body again. Let's just do that. You will see that it's actually formatted it as HTML, and you can see that, yeah, you can see the entire basically website here. So that's what dir.xml means, and yeah, so it works for HTML elements and also apparently XML, but I don't know how to try that. The next one is pretty obvious, just console.error. It does exactly what you expect. This is an error, and it just gives you an error in red. That's basically it. Alright. Okay, next we're going to do 3 functions, and it's called console.group. So let's say group and call it, you can enter a string, something, and then now you can put anything in it. Console.log, hello, console.error, world, and then you have console.group, and to close the group, I guess. So you can see that now inside the something there's 2 of these things basically. And yeah, I would just say, I don't know, for formatting you can indent them or whatever you want. You can also have another group inside the group. So if you do console.group something inside something, and then you can have .dir, you know, document.body. So you can use whatever else console functions in here, and then you can say console.group end. Great, so you can have all of that. And maybe you want to collapse it by default, so you can have, you know, group collapsed. If you change it to that, now it just gives you collapsed this thing, and you can choose to expand it if you want. And you know, you can replace all of these group things with group collapse also. Okay, the next thing is console.info, and it's basically console.log, but it has this like info icon, I guess. So you know, console.log, log. Other than that, I think it does exactly the same thing. It's kind of like console.debug, debug. You know, all 3 things, they do exactly the same thing, except they have different icons and different formatting in different browsers. Okay, so this one is a bit confusing and a bit complicated, and I'll personally probably never use it. But let's say you have a Fibonacci sequence that calculates like a ton of like Fibonacci numbers, and you want to see some statistics about that, I guess. You can do console.profile, profile, I don't know, and then yeah, do that, and then profile end, a profile. So, and you'll see that after it does stuff, it actually doesn't do anything really, but you have to go to this part called timelines, at least in Safari you have to, and it's a bit gimmicky, I would say, but basically you can see that at the end it says like this thing is recorded, start time, end time, total time. I think that's how it works. I might be wrong, but yeah, there isn't much like info about this, so yeah. Okay, so let's just say we have some random data, some arrays, some 2D arrays, and an object. And you know, one way that I shown you previously, to a good way for like logging an object would be console.dir, and it will show you something like this, and that's pretty good. But actually, you can also do things, make things in a table. So if you say console.table, the first array, I guess, console.table are, it gives you this index and value. So that's a very neat and nice way of doing this. You can also do console.table, the second thing are 2D, and this actually gives you, it smartly like makes the value a different thing, and you can actually sort by all of this. So yeah, that's pretty cool, and it gives you a 2D array. And you can also use it on objects, but let's see if it works that well. Sometimes it doesn't. Right, control dot, whoops, I was saying objects and I typed that. Console.table, and it gives you that. And somehow I just like eliminated the name and other things. So yeah, as I've said, the object, I probably won't use console.table for objects, but for arrays, I think it's pretty great. Okay, the next 3 are console.time, time in, and time log. So let's just bring back our Fibonacci sequence from before. You can say console.time and console.time, time if I can spell, time end. And this actually gives you correctly 3.5 something milliseconds. And I think this is much better than profile, and profile is technically not supported like officially. It's like different for all browsers, so I won't use that. But console.time and console.time end is perfectly fine. And you know, you can do console.time log, and you can do another function somewhere like Fibonacci, I don't know, again, time log, it gives you that. Here it logs it again, and then it ends that, and then resets everything with time end. You can also have, you know, two separate timers I have said. You can have like time, you know, you can enter a name here like hello, and then it will just do something. And then you have to like have all of these hello, and it changes the label to hello, so you can have also multiple timers. And I feel like, yeah, time is pretty cool and something that I should definitely be using more. Okay, the next one is console.trace. So if you just say console.trace like this and give it some name, I don't know, it just says console.trace hello global code. But let's say if you put it in a function, so function hello. If you couldn't tell already, I'd like to use the word hello. And now if you call the function here, it will actually show you where the function is, who called it, etc. So if you have a call func, I guess. So if you use this, I don't know, to call a function like that, and then you call this function, it will show you all of that, right? So that's pretty cool. If you put it in a object, I guess, yeah, function, you can, and then you make an object.call function. It will say object.call, wait, yeah, it's this thing, function, and then it will say hello, call func global code. So objects, it doesn't include part of the trace, but if you, this would be very useful for things like, you know, to see who called that function, where did it get from, and you know, what happened to it. So yeah, that's really cool and pretty useful in certain situations. Okay, so now onto the last one. Now we have console.warn. So that's basically a warning, and that's it. So a warning, and then it gives you this yellow with a warning symbol. And that's basically it. And now we have finished off all of the functions in the console object, I guess. And so if you learned something, I definitely did when researching this video. If you learned something, definitely like and subscribe, because I will be uploading more videos like this pretty regularly, and it also supports me a lot and makes me happy. So yeah, if you liked it, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.